Yeah, we're live. It's 107. It is not the morning, but regardless of that, this is your morning motivation. So go get your projects done. If you have projects, I just got a text from Oliver, the kid that won the kid that won the Nova. He's got the L69, now a modified version of that installed in the Nova. So nice way to go, Oliver, for a good project. He's been listening to the motivation show. So he's got it in there. I don't know if he's got it running. He said he was having trouble with the distributor, and then I think he's replacing an HEI. Said it was only retarding and not advancing or something. So I think he's got that fixed. So hopefully we'll maybe he'll send me a startup clip or something, which is awesome. I wish I was there helping him because working on motors, that's all cool stuff. And I talked to the guys at West Tech. I probably will not be going down next week because the dyno schedule it's not working. So maybe after the MPMC is when I'll be doing more testing. So what that means good stuff for the family. I get to stay here, excuse me, and be with him. Mila, don't get up. Okay, he's laying under his blanket. He's cold. So today we're going to talk about the thumbnail that I have up is a 4.6 liter modular Ford lash adjuster. And this is a tip that Mahovitz or somebody, Sanchez, I don't know, somebody told me about when we were doing lots and lots of camshafts when I was writing my Modular Ford book. And back when I was doing a ton of Modular Ford testing back at West Tech and running 462 valves. We ran some 3-valve stuff, lots of 4-valve stuff, a variety of different Modular Ford stuff back then. And when we were doing lots of cam swaps, which I ran 6 sets of cams, all of them that they had basically for the Modular Ford program that Comp had back in the day for the 2-valve stuff. We ran all of them, all of the PI and 3 sets of the PI and the non-PI stuff, and ran all of them. When you're doing a bunch of cam swaps, the swapping the cam part is fairly easy. But when you go to put them back in, you have to pop because you put the camshaft in and bolt that in place. And then we line the cam up and then pop the rockers in. And then when you pop the rockers in, you've got to kind of pry them in place. And if you take the lash adjuster out before you do this, and what we do is put it in the vise and then you slowly squeeze it down. Don't hydrolock it, try to break something. But if you slowly squeeze it down, you can see the oil bleeding out of the bleed hole on the side. There may even be 2 of them. I only remember seeing one, but maybe that's because the only one that was facing us. But if you slowly tighten the vise, you can see the oil come back out of that, and then pretty soon you've got a springy motion there on the lash adjuster. And then when you put that in and you go to pop the rocker in place, you can push down the lash adjuster a little bit, and it's just easier rather than having to work against one that's that has all of the oil and it's holding the lash adjuster in place. And then that way, popping the rockers in, it just makes it easier. So it's a good little tip. Takes a little bit of time, and as you can see, a lot of times we'll put the aluminum jaws on there, but really you're not going to hurt the lash adjuster is pretty tough. And a lot of times when we're doing stuff, we also are not opposed to. I've put shims under those lash adjusters too to usually to make up for a small bake circle cam or a reground cam, that kind of thing. And that works also too. So pro tip number 1, I guess I don't know if I've done a lot of these. Pro tip number 1, squish the lash adjuster down in the vise before you do the cam swaps. And that way, when you pop the rocker in, it goes in a lot easier. So let's see. Okay, would you guys like to see more pro tips on the live feeds? Things like this, use vice grips here. Don't use it here. Use vice grips on, take all of the, here's another pro tip. When you're doing engine dyno testing and all you have is a drive-by-wire throttle body and you don't want to run a drive-by-wire throttle body, we'll tear all of the electronics off of it with a hammer or vise or torch or whatever, chisel, And then what we do is then you're just left with a shaft that would have been turned by an electric motor. And then what we do is I just put the throttle in the position that I want it, and then vice grip it, and then do some super Richie drive by cable. Just put a stainless wire or even baling wire on it, and then I just use that as the throttle. And then what I've done in the past is actually just take a return spring, hook the return spring to the vice grip, and then down to a bolt or something. And then so when I go to throttle, it just goes to throttle and comes back. And in a pinch, it works good. You can weld it and weld an arm on it and do all that stuff that you want to do. But this works, this works too. So those are the kinds of pro tips I'm talking about. And so we'll scroll back and see what you guys are doing. Ski. Aaron, what's up? Shout outs from Memphis. Modular lash adjuster bleeding technique. That's right. That's technical. Australia is in the house from the boys down under. North Carolina, Toledo. That's up by, well, it's in Ohio anyways, is what I know. Is the K24A2 the only one worth building? No, there's other versions of that also work. North Carolina. Brian, NorCal, so you're local. The Big IE, land of milk and honey. Lubbock, Texas is in the house. I'm trying to think of where Chad is. I think Chad's outside of Dallas, maybe. Ford 2.3 turbo or Chevy 2.7 for affordable daily old school. Is it a Ford or a Chevy? I think I would pick a Ford with a Ford and a Chevy with a Chevy, but both of those are cool, like other guys' kinds of things. Travis, I will be at MPMC. The Dodge 4-cylinder head in the thumbnail was neat. I took a picture for Instagram and for Facebook, and I was at the O'Reilly's, and they have their little, it almost looks like a flat version of a fender cover, and they just have their display on there talking about tools that they have and stuff that they sell, and they have rebuilt motors, and the motor that they use to designate that, hey, we have to promote the fact that we have rebuilt motors, was a Dodge 2.2 turbo motor, which I thought was an interesting choice given the fact that was from the 80s and early 90s. Toledo's at about an hour south of Detroit. Okay. What's up with the LS 4-cylinder at the SEMA? That's not a real running motor yet. I mean, I think that the 4-cylinder short block is a running motor, but I don't think that they have the LS configuration done yet on it. I have to get the designations on the K24s. The one that Ish got was not a K24A2, but his was still like 190 or 200 horsepower. So I'd have to see what other designation it is. And mine was not an A2 either, the one that I have. Sweden's in the house. Nice. When you're running nitrous, do you still run the same air fuel as NA? We don't. We normally nitrous guys tend to run them richer than that. Some of the really high horsepower nitrous guys don't do that. They'll run it in the 12s. But most times high 11s is where we tend to run the nitrous. Pushrod pro tip: the caliper measurement on the adjustable pushrod plush preload is not the actual pushrod length. There is typically a 17 thousandths difference between the advertised length and the caliper length. I don't measure When we measure a push rod, why would the length be different? Because are you talking about the preload on the lifter or something? I do it with turns anyways, and then we measure the push rod with calipers, and when we measure the push rod with the caliper, it comes out right. Do you think swapping in a truck Norris cam on an LS will negatively affect fuel mileage when driven the same, seeing how low end power seems to be the same as stock? It's not going to be the same as stock at 2000 RPM. And also you might be driving a lot below 2000 RPM when you're cruising. And then the cruise fuel mileage is not necessarily directly related to a wide open throttle torque output. So I don't know what like a steady state cruise at 2000 RPM going down the freeway under vacuum. I don't know what that cam does versus a stock cam in terms of fuel mileage. What's the name of your recent video where you mounted the Ford supercharger on the LS? Would like to see that plus a turbo on the LS. I wouldn't ever do that on the LS because it's not necessary, because the LS already spools the turbo up. But what I was going to do is, and I say that, and I'm going to have to backpedal on that a little bit. Originally, my idea was that I wanted to take a 4.8, and the guys, Environ from VS Racing, sent me a big turbo, and I was going to put the big turbo on the 4.8, and then have it not spool up very well, and I was going to cure the spool with a supercharger, but not one that's that big, though, not that 2.3 liter. I was thinking more I think I was thinking about doing it with a 4.8 or the 3800. So put a big turbo on the 3800 that doesn't spool up very well, and then cure it with the supercharger, cure it with the Gen 5 supercharger. On the 4.8, I need to have something that's like an LSA would be good, but that doesn't need that 2300, because the 2300 is already it's got to be a 7 or 800. Well, it probably could make more than that. That might even be 1,000 horsepower turbo. Late early show. This is a late early show. It's not an early late show. Brian, I don't know what Pro M management system is. Admiral twin charging. Yeah, we did twin charge the 3800 already, and as you saw, I'm surprised after twin charging it that video didn't really get a lot of views either. So it's not really necessary. It's not really very effective, and it doesn't get a lot of views. So it's not good in any way. What's the benefit of Frankenstein LS LT cylinder heads and block with a dowel pin? What's a dowel pin conversion kit? So are you running LS heads on an LT or something? When is the 2.2 going to be dynoed and tested? I don't know. As soon as I can. Frankenstein. That's right. Turbo Sentra, pulling your engine out. That's how it all starts. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know if they're trying to use one engine family block and one engine family head and trying to mix and match them. Yeah, my what big knockers. Why, thank you, doctor. Ever look at doing anything with Westech's old LT5 motor they have? I have. I've talked to Eric about it many, many times. We just haven't ever done it. Burns, if you want to do, you can go online and do searches for it, even Wikipedia. But you can go online and you'll find all of the applications for these K24s. And what you're looking at, just look at the power output. That's what's going to tell you which one that you want to use. You want to use something that's you don't want to use a 160 horsepower one. You want to use something that's a 200 horsepower one. I realize it's a rough question, but on a good set of headers, when should you consider upgrading from inch and 5/8 to larger on a 3 small block? I don't know. Honestly, if you go from inch and 5/8 to inch and 3/4, you're probably not going to see very much. What's your opinion on the old LT5? I think it's really cool. It's not. It's obviously now it's been surpassed by any run of the mill LS motor, but it's still cool enough that it's unique and there's definitely other guys. Type S, TSX. Yeah, even not just the full high performance ones. There are other versions that you can use that will work. And even if you started with 160 horsepower, it's still going to make a lot of power under boost. So what? Wow, we're at 97% saying more pro tips. Yeah, pro tip. Yeah, and I personally I like the 2.4 more than I like the 2 liter because it's bigger. It's more bigger and more better, and it's less expensive. So it has all the things going for it. Because for some reason the guys covet the 2 liters, the K20s. You can start pro tips right here in chat. Yeah, you guys are welcome to throw out pro tips for everybody. Pro tips all around. Pro tip, Milo: use your blanket and go to sleep. Okay. Did you run a front sway bar on your Honda for racing? Yes, on both of them. We ran on the road race car. We definitely ran front and rear bars. On the Bonneville car, it also had a front sway bar on it. I've been looking for an RSX Type S. Yep, they're all VTEC. Yeah, that's like buying a a B series VTEC Civic. It's just they're thrashed. Dan, so the pro tip is to switch from top chat to live chat. Am I missing comments? It didn't see much of a difference. I've been reading about a lot of guys taking the front sway bar off for road racing. You would have to do some things to your suspension to make that work. I know typically a front wheel drive is going to want to understeer, but you can make it not do that. For drag racing, removal of the front sway bar or even disconnecting it just so that you get more weight transfer is better. But you don't want to. Sway bar is usually pretty good, and it's usually the last fine tuning thing that you use to try to counter body roll. Although the thing with the double A arm suspension is you have a really good camber curve in it, so the tire tends to stay in contact. But it depends on what you've done with your shock valving and your spring rates. I run a hollow sway bar. Yep. The hollow ones are really nice and lightweight. Richard, you're missing lots of comments. Pro tip: a 5-liter 302 is a 4.9. It's not. It's a 5-liter. Hug your dog today? Yeah, I did. I do that every day. The 300 inline 6-cylinder, I do want to run that. Why wasn't the small block Chevy LT1 more popular? It is a good motor and can make lots of power. And in fact, I had somebody make a comment today that just silliness on one of the videos. But I think what hurt that is the reliability of that OptiSpark. That kind of doomed that thing. But they, it was the high water mark for the small block Chevy stuff, even though it's reverse cooling and it's a specific block and stuff. Why are small journal 327s listed as 5.3 and a big journal 327 listed as a 5.4? Why would there be a different? Why would the journal size change? The bore and stroke are the same. We were working on the video for the NSX. Jimmy and I were working on that today. And we're looking at the power curve on a turbo NSX, and the torque curve is really, really flat. What are the best budget heads for a 454? The best ones are the ones that you have, because then you didn't spend any money. There's if you want on the 454, if you want aluminum heads, then there's lots of inexpensive aluminum heads out there for big blocks. Although I would watch out for some of the valve train on some of them. Which I did in my truck with a low mile bone stock 5.3. Well, what do you want to do with it? I mean, what is it you're going to do with it? Is it just a daily driver? A tune is a good way. The best gains you're going to get are cam and springs. You have a low mileage 9401. You should put it away and save it, and then sell it when it's worth a whole bunch of money. Oh, so Oliver's sending me over the startup video right now. He says he's watching the live feed. Adam, low compression LS builds work fine. I mean, all of the factory like 4.8s and 5.3s and 6.0s, those are all going to be near 9-to-1 or a little over 9-to-1. So that's fairly low compression. You can do lower if you want, and like you said, the tuning window is much better. Actually, for most guys just starting out, it's probably better. It's probably safer, especially if they want, everybody wants to make 1 million horsepower on pump gas, and it'd be much better to be experimenting with that with low compression. You did a video on Speedmaster heads. I don't recommend those. I don't recommend a lot of guys buy bare heads, buy those heads bare, and then put their own springs and valves and things like that in there. And that might be a good way to go, but not their complete head. Back in the day, tuning for the LT5 headers worked, although all of those things were fairly expensive. It did an exhaust, did extrude honing on the intake manifold, did porting on the heads. I don't think that they did any cams, and then they did a like a nitrous shot on it. I was told by the guy that holds the record for my engine that the stock head will flow 500 horsepower. Well, yes and no. What he's saying is that you can make 500 horsepower with a turbo with that head. And that's not unusual because even if that head will support, I don't know, let's say that head flows, let's say it flows 200 CFM, which a four valve head, that wouldn't be unusual. A Honda head flows way more than that, like closer to 300 CFM, or maybe even more on a K series. So if it flows that much, it will support 200 NA horsepower. Making 500 horsepower is only, 15 or 20 pounds of boost. It's not hard. So that's not a big deal. How hot is too hot on an intake temps for a turbo port injection motor? What do you mean? When will detonation happen, or what are you trying to ask there? Richard, to expand on the Hemi question, the valve seats are replaceable. Yes. Is there an aftermarket head for Hemis? Yes. Edelbrock makes heads for it, and I think other people do too. Nimbly, you need to stop asking questions about your camshaft. You need to just get a camshaft. You don't want to keep bothering people and go back and forth about camshafts. Just get a camshaft. I recommended the Red Hot cam. I'm not going to keep telling you why I recommended that. That's the cam that I would put in there. And if you don't want that one, then you should choose something else. I'm not going to argue with people about my recommendation. You get the cam that you want. After I tell you, if you ask me which one I would recommend and I give you a recommendation, that's the end of the discussion. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. You just need to go get your camshaft. If you don't want to take my advice, then don't take it. Take somebody else's advice. But I'll tell you the thing that I don't like, and the thing that BTR doesn't like, and Cam Motion and everybody else. When a guy like you or anybody goes around to 20 different people to keep getting their advice and then keep trying to pit all those people against each other about their advice, if you don't want the advice, then don't take it. I was happy to give it to you, but you can't keep going back and forth. Is it safe to assume the Hemi pistons are cast and not forged? I don't know about the Demon pistons or the supercharged ones. I don't know if those are factory forged ones. I don't know about the FST carbs. If I've used them, it's only been once or twice, and it's only because West Tech had one. What's the best exhaust pipe size and or set it for a 6-liter LS? There's no best, so we need to get rid of that word from our automotive dictionary. That's not a real thing. What exhaust do you have on there now, and what are you trying to achieve with whatever new exhaust you want to put on there? Do you want it to sound better? Do you want it to make a little more power? It might make a little more power, but it's not going to make a lot more power because it's not terribly restrictive the way that it is, more likely than not. Didn't Tim Taylor have a bigger than stock LT5 and an SS Impala? They did make some stroker versions of those, and then way back they did like the snake skinner ones and stuff. And I think that they did bigger, more powerful versions of those, but I don't know what they were though. Does the 300 Ford 6 have a better mechanical leverage? So explain that to me. Explain what you mean by that. Here, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Here's the thing to think about. If you have let's say both of these motors were making 250 horsepower. Let's say that the 302 6-cylinder was making 250 horsepower and the 302 8-cylinder was making 350 horsepower. So that would mean that the 6-cylinder head has to flow more because it's making more horsepower per cylinder than the 8-cylinder is. So if you have limited head flow, I would rather have limited head flow on a motor that has more cylinders than one that has less cylinders, because if it's limiting head flow, but you just start stacking more of those, ultimately you can make more power. The leverage thing, the inline 6-cylinder versus the V8, displacement is the big thing. So whatever the displacement is. And then the things that I talked about, like head flow and cam timing and intake manifold that you mentioned there. I think I've seen a Cleveland head. Yeah, they welded heads together. They did LS heads on those 300 6-cylinders and also Cleveland's, because it's the same, almost identical bore spacing. Adam was thinking excessively low compression just to test a short 5.3 rod and a 4.8 puts the piston 125 down in the hole. That's probably not a good idea, though. You're going to run into detonation issues if you have 125 thousandths quench. That's pretty common on the Dodge LA motors. That's what they did to break the compression down. They just pulled the thing down in the hole. I think that the Slant 6 is like that too, and that's not a good idea. It'd be better to get 7.6 to 1, doing it a different way with a bigger chamber and or a dish piston, rather than have the thing that far down in the hole. I think if you're trying to hedge detonation, that would be a better way to go. Steve, I don't know about the cam core size for, I'm assuming that that's for a high RPM drag race application. What horsepower should I worry about ring gap in stock LS short block with nitrous? Are you taking it apart to put ring gap in? If you're running lots of nitrous on it, you should put ring gap in it. If you're running a little bit of nitrous, you should put ring gap in it, because when you run a little bit of nitrous, it's like running a little bit of boost. You're going to go up. You're going to run more, especially if you have the jets. If they sent you 125 and 150 and 175 jets, oh, I'll just run the 125s. Yeah, you will only run the 125s if you don't just throw. You'd have to throw away all the others to not use them, because you're going to use them. And so you should just, if you have it out or you have it apart, you should just put ring gap in it. Let's see. Do you think the 6-pack 340 or the 440s or any 6-packs are gimmicks? Seems to me you can get the same results with a 4-barrel carb. You can. I think that for years and years and years, putting multiple carburetors on there had the potential to make more power because they had such small carburetors. But if you look at, I'd like to run a 440 6-pack and a 440 factory 4-barrel, and I think that you would get as much as you would. I think that the factory 4-barrel probably would make as much as a 6-pack. And I think the same thing on a 440, and also like on a big block Chevy, the tri-power stuff on the 427. I think you put the L72 intake manifold on there and ran the 6-pack against that, I think that they probably would make comparable power. It would be a really interesting test. The problem is finding good running, tunable, tri-power setups. Is the L7 lifter the same length as the OEM lifter? I don't know. Would you ever consider putting an LS head on a Windsor? I won't ever do that. There's just too many good Windsor heads for that. The last nitrous car I helped on, we hit 50, then 125 twice, then put the 200s in it. That's usually how nitrous goes. Adam, I still think if the thing is down in the hole, that I think you run into a detonation issue. But I could be wrong about that. Actually, in the Engine Masters test, the 6-pack made less than the 4-barrel. That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, let's see. So we're at 94% on our chat. Yeah. You guys want more pro tips? More pro tips? Just a tip. Just the pro tip. What size jets are you using? You use jets? It should just be the flow rate of the plate and the flow rate of the solenoid. That's your limiting factor, right? Tom, I think the LS7 lifter is the same length, but the plunger height may be different. That's the thing I don't know about. I don't know if the difference between the cup, the plunger cup, and the tip of the roller, if that distance is the same, because that's the thing that's going to determine whether or not you have to change the pushrod length. Is the pre-turbo 100% meth injection test coming? I am going to do that. Hopefully I can do that when I'm down at West Tech this next time. I thought all the LS rods were the same length. LS push rods are? What are the main pitfalls for the first-time engine builder? Lack of confidence and being in too big a hurry usually are the things. The nice thing now about having YouTube, which wasn't around forever, obviously, is you can actually go on and sometimes the guys that are doing YouTube videos don't give you the information. They don't photograph it very well. The guy's trying to do the wrench while he's holding the camera, because I know, because I've done that, and it doesn't come out very well. A lot of times what you want to see, and the thing that I recommend, is when you're taking it apart, take pictures or videos of everything so that you know what something looked like. Oh, which way did that go? Did it go this way or that way? Because it can go on both ways. Well, it can go on both ways, but it's only right one way. So take pictures of all those things when you take it apart and have everything organized when you're doing it. What I do, even now, even today, when I take an LS motor apart, all the front cover bolts go into a bag. It says FC. All the valley cover bolts, VC, or valve cover, also says VC. I don't do valve cover bolts because they're retained on the valve cover, but you get what I mean. The rear cover, all those bolts are together, only so that when I go to put the front cover on, I don't have to search around for bolts. If you just grab them and throw them all in a bucket or whatever, which I have stuff like that too, but it's so much easier and so much faster to have them organized and go and put the front cover on, put all the bolts on, put the damper on, put the damper all the way in, tighten all the bolts. You know, it makes life a lot easier if it's organized. Let's see. Thought all the tips were pro tips. They are. Pro tips a misnomer. Michael Blacktree, that's a good one. Pro tip, put a plastic bag over the can of POR 15 before you put on the lid. The lid will seal better and it won't glue itself to the can. It won't be permanently sealed once you put it back on. Plastic gauge. I've used this motor and all the motors that I did for the Del Sol for the U.S. Touring Car Championship, that one right back there. All of those motors were built with plastic gauge. When your cam test on the 4.6 liter, did you do any 4-valve stuff? Yes. If so, did you do a comparison between OEM camshafts? I only did, no, not factory. I didn't do different factory camshafts. I only did the '03 Cobra stuff. And then we did adjusting those. And then we did replacement cams for those. We put the 262 cams in place of the stock '03 Cobra cams. Marty, the connecting rod lengths on all the LSs are not the same. Just the 4/8 are different. I have a 91 454. What cam would you recommend? Super Sniper, Elbrock Performer. Everything else is stock. Looking for maximum power. Is it a stock bottom end? Do you want to rev this thing really high? Do you have lots of gear in it? Is it a stick? Is it an automatic? Is it a converter upgrade? Because the maximum power means that you want to run this thing now to beyond 8,000 RPM. That's what maximum power means to me. So what is the real thing? Because I'm sure that that's not the case. Amos, you're gonna sell a 8.1 stud kit? That's very cool. Not going to compete with ARP, but still be better than stock. That'll be good. Do you have a manufacturer that can make those? And what are you making them out of? And let me know, and we'll run them on the 8.1. What's the title of the red hot cam test? I don't know if I have one specific for that. I think I do. Let's see. The search for YouTube is terrible. I mean, I have stuff that's right there in the title and it doesn't bring it up. So I guess I need to do a no, I know I did though. Elgin cams. Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris versus Hot Rod versus Sloppy Stage 2. So I don't think I have one directly for the Red Hot cam, but I have it tested I tested it when we did all those. Sandwich bag and Sharpie. Yep, that's the way to go. Then you have those bags everywhere. What I like is I like having no bags left, and there's no parts left. When you put the motor back together, all of the bags, and I take the bags and I put them all in one spot so that you have, look, I have all empty bags and the motor's all together. So those things should go together. Marty, the 4.8 has longer rods than a 5.3, a 6.0, or a 6.2. It has a shorter crank, a longer rod, but the same piston compression height. So that's how they did that. So a 4.8 piston and a 5.3 piston are interchangeable. And so the rod has to be longer because the stroke is shorter. Aside from an old ring, any tips to cleaning the carbon out of the ring lands. That's really the best way. We break an old ring, and use it. Although I don't like breaking old rings because I normally reuse those. But you can use screwdrivers or picks or whatever. What are you doing, man? He's snoring. How to mess up your first engine, the accidentally wrong bolt that's a tad too long, cracking the block when it's torqued. That's bad. And you can actually do that. If you do that on the LS with the cam retaining plate, one of those will go in and hit the crank. You can ask me how I know that. I want to do a mini truck, but I have an 89 Daytona a month or so ago and want to do a V8 in it. So that's the next project. Very cool. Richard, other than passion, what drove you to do what you do for a living? Well, that's what it happened by accident. I've told that story many times about going out to the Silver State race and stuff, and then writing a story, and then just throwing away my advertising degree and going off on the not lucrative automotive journalism career. 243 heads on a 5.3 or 799s. Those are the same heads, so it doesn't matter. Both of those will do exactly the same thing. Eric, there's no red hot cam test video up. Let's see, Mike. It's a good day. I got word my cam is on the way. Not my first or second choice, but I got one. Nice. Only small base circle, small block stuff I can find. Yeah, I only use, let's see. The Magnum will go back on the dyno. Pro tip, don't clean the carbon off the top of the piston. That's just compression, right? Let's see. What are the differences between expensive turbos like Hellion or Bullseye compared to others, VS Racing and Borg, that you use? I don't know you can determine there's a difference between cost. You could look at the difference between specs on the turbo, and then maybe you could look at the difference between wheel design and stuff. Yeah, the $162 turbo was the GT45. I thought it was 163. In fact, I'm certain that it was. Yeah, 1,000 horsepower with $263 turbos. See, mine like a steel trap. Aaron is saying that if you soak your pistons for 24 hours in mean green super strength pure concentrate, you can literally wipe the carbon off. Big Rick, 557, 5577. Ever plan to do any videos where you install your junkyard turbo motors in cars and race them at the strip? I don't have any vehicles to do that, so that's not what this channel is. This channel is a testing channel. Although we are doing some project cars. The NSX is coming up with a J-Swap NSX, and the Omni is coming up. Do old school V8 stock stamp rockers care about boost? They won't know that boost is there. The only thing you have to worry about with stock stamp steel rockers is usually the retaining nut. They're not as good as roller rockers are, obviously, but and they would be more susceptible to problems with RPM, and obviously, and then the retaining bolt backing off. Those little pinch nuts are not that great. Did you read that? $163 turbos with a S at the end. Yep, they don't know that boost is there. I love the competitive nature. Come on, everything has to be better. Everything has to be best. Everything has to be silly. Do the titanium rods from the NSX fit other Hondas? I don't, honestly, I don't think I've ever even looked at the thickness and the length or any of that stuff. I have got to see them up close sticking out of a block before. It's not good. Few more minutes. Go ahead and take our poll down 95%. Obviously, everybody's wanting some pro tips. Pro tiptuals. Have you ever considered the build of a 307 Olds? I have not. I don't know that I've ever even seen one. Aren't all Honda V6s the same? No, they're not. Go try to price a C series Honda and then compare it to a J series Honda. It's ridiculous. And titanium connecting rods. I think I might still have my original factory owner's manual that came with the NSX that I bought. I really like those cars. I liked it when I got it, and Lisa got to drive her for a really long time when we were dating. And that's a really good car. I mean, it was, I would call it the Japanese Ferrari, and I thought that was the case. So I bought a Ferrari, and the NSX does everything better. It just didn't have as much power, but it was really nice. Richard, I watched your video on throttle body size. I have an LS1 throttle body. Should I get an LS6 intake for a twin turbo or fast? You don't really need the LS1 intake is not good. The LS6 intake is good. You don't need a fast intake. An LS6 intake is fine. And the thing about having a turbo is you can make the power that you want with a turbo with almost any intake manifold. So we normally use the truck because whenever we get 5.3s, they come with a truck manifold and it makes life easy. And you don't have to do intake upgrades because you're going to be blowing through it anyway. Not that it doesn't affect it. It does. But even if it does affect it, and even if the intake manifold's down 10 or 15 horsepower, that really doesn't matter. If you have a 700 horsepower turbo, you're going to get to 700 horsepower regardless of what the intake manifold's doing. Any tips for the PCV system on the LS engines? We breathe them to atmosphere. I don't run them back in the intake manifold because if you look inside an LS intake manifold that's running in the way that the factory has it set up, it's all full of oil. $460 Big Bang, just a 460 just by itself would be another win. I haven't run one of those in a really long time. And Mark has a 429 that we can run, but not a Big Bang on it, though. Oh, a C5, so there's no room for a truck. If it's a C5, does it does it already have an LS6 intake manifold on it, depending on what year it is? Because they ultimately went away from the LS1 intake manifold, and then everything got LS6 intake manifolds. But I don't remember what year that was. I know 2 minutes has gone by, but I didn't say 2 minutes. I said a few minutes, and that's different. It's a different time value. I'll leave when Milo wakes up. That will be never. Oh, 99, so it has an LS1. Okay, yeah, that's early. I want to run a 2.3 turbo Ford also, and I need to call the Car Farm guys and see if they have a they may have a 2.3 turbo motor, which would be cool. Big boost 8 valve test. You mean the 2.2 Chrysler? That will get boost. The 2.2 is not going to get a lot of boost because it's the early one. It's the 84. So I wouldn't do a lot of boost on it until we put bigger head bolts and stuff in there. But the 2.5 will get a lot of boost. Or maybe you're talking about the 2.3 Ford. Miracor. I do like those cars. I like the XR4 TIs. I like them more than I like the Mustang. Get 3 minutes left. Actually, yeah, 3 minutes. All right, Scott, I'll see you, man. Stay safe out there. It's raining a lot here. It's raining cats and dogs. Milo just stepped in a poodle. Does anybody know if they did anything to the bottom end of the Charger Hemi police cars? Is that motor any different? I wouldn't think that it would be. Have you been watching Calvin's? Yeah, I watch Calvin stuff all the time. I've talked to him quite a few times. And I have a Vortec. I already have a 4200. We've already run boost and stuff on it. And I have another one going back together that we're going to do stuff on. The 4200 I like. It's the Ameribear, and we want to do some stuff with it. I found a guy that might be able to port a head for it, so that would be cool. It would be cool to have 4 draws and pistons in it, and then a ported head and head studs, and then cams, just like everything else, and then a turbo, and then another turbo. Yeah, Michael, the 4200 it's really tall from where the oil pan is to the top. I think it's taller than a BMW is. I might just get a whole Trailblazer for a 4200. That'd be good. The Amera 2J. I think that a stock 5.7 Hemi in a patrol car is probably fast enough. Instead of swapping a 4200 into something, just get a Trailblazer and put a Turbo 400 on it instead of the stock trans. I wonder if Calvin's ever done that. 8.8 with Caltrax. It's all drag racy stuff, man. So Robert, so all those 8V motors, they're all good. Those are all good choices. I agree. What's my opinion on a 2ZZGE? I don't really have one. I don't know if I've ever even run one or even seen one, but I kind of doubt that that's comparable to a K20. But since I don't know anything about it, I would just be speculating. But I don't ever remember reading about a 200 horsepower version of that. Yeah, the K series is pretty impressive. Just like the B16 was back in the day. There weren't other. I don't think that there were other naturally aspirated 1.6 liters making 160 horsepower, and certainly not ones making 185 horsepower like the B16B. Civic Type R race motor. And on that note, it has been 3 minutes. Thank you guys all for showing up. Go get your projects done. Thank everybody for being here, and I will see you guys all tonight. It's Friday. Maybe a happy hour in horsepower. Yeah.